I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 277 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. This is part 4 of the Get What You Want series. And today we're talking about how to feel more connected. So I am so glad to be in part 4 of this series. I can't tell you that we've struck a chord somehow with this notion of helping you get what you want. I'm delighted by the DMs and the feedback and the messages about the content of these last 3 episodes. Now, what today will be 4. So I appreciate that. You don't know how much it means as a host of a podcast to have people reaching back out and turning this into a two-way dialogue. And I'm just really grateful for that. So thank you for letting me know that this is striking a chord with you and that you are kind of on the journey with me, right? That these are topics that matter to you. And today's topic is a really good one. It's one that I hear about a lot inside of our client community where I'm already in two-way dialogue with women. It came up when we asked for input about potential topics from you as a community of listeners. And I'm so grateful for that input that's been coming in. And it also comes up just in the zeitgeist, right? If we listen to what people are talking about, especially post-pandemic, right? As we are reemerging into normal life, whatever that means, I think this notion of acknowledging that we've become disconnected from one another is really powerful. And I think what we're really saying is that we want to feel less lonely. And that might sound a little strange. Like, how can we be lonely when we're so busy, right? When we're so in the presence of people, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in our homes where there's little people running around or at the grocery store or the mall, like we're kind of surrounded by people and yet we're not connected. And the thing is that loneliness doesn't necessarily mean being alone. Loneliness is a state of mind that we get into when there's a disconnect between our need for or our desire for that true human connection and our actual level of connection. In other words, when we have this longing for connection and it's unfulfilled, that's what we describe as loneliness. And it might sound obvious, but loneliness really does thrive in solitude. I can remember the loneliest chapter in my life, I think, was when I had just graduated from college. And I graduated early, which meant I was leaving behind a really good group of friends. They were still there for another year, and I was off to my new job. And I accepted a job in a city where I knew no one, like 0 people. Nobody. I didn't know anyone in the company I was going to work for. I didn't know anyone who lived there. 0 people. And moreover, I had a home office for my job. So this was like 1995. This was not the era we are living in today with home offices. So it wasn't that common. And most of the young people in the city, I was in Atlanta, were going to offices every day. Right. And I was working from the second bedroom of my apartment and occasionally, regularly driving to see customers in the job that I was in. But again, the connection that I was having with those buyers was not really the kind of meaningful connection I was longing for. And that period of time when I had all of the makings of being really lonely, it was like I threw gasoline on a fire of loneliness by being isolated, by living alone and working from home and just sort of being in this isolated environment. So when I think about this topic and how important it is to drive meaningful connection, I think back to that chapter and it really grounds me in just how destructive, really painful that chapter of life became. And I think another kind of offshoot of loneliness is that we don't always know to call it that, right? We know that we don't feel great. And we might start engaging in a lot of different behaviors to make ourselves feel better, but we haven't necessarily named that this is, in fact, the issue. So there is a bit of recognizing, right? I am feeling like an island here. And in order to pull myself out of this, I'm going to have to take the initiative. to put myself out there and create some connections. And that doesn't sound easy, does it? Because I think while spending time with a good friend feels easy, right? Or uplifting or like desirable, the conversation flows and the time flies by and you're feeling really good afterward. You get all those feel good hormones that come with laughing and sharing memories together. Getting to that point of that uncomplicated relationship takes some time. The research on this, I looked at the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, and the data there says it takes more than 200 hours of time spent with someone to really consider them to be a close friend. And those hours take us deeper and deeper into connection, but we have to stack them up, right? So if we want these connections, we're going to have to do some things to foster those connections. And in today's episode, I really want to make this as simple as I possibly can, because look, on top of feeling lonely, we're also time-starved. So if you're sitting there sort of rolling your eyes in your car thinking, great, now I can add one more thing to my already overflowing to-do list. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible because I want you to have the benefit. So the first question I think we need to ask if we want these deeper connections is, with whom? Who do I really feel like connecting with right now? Who would it feel good to talk with or to spend some time with? Because when it comes from a place of choice, right? Instead of like, oh, I'm supposed to spend time with this person. When we really feel like we want to, the whole thing just flows better. So just to kind of get your creative juices flowing, probably the person I hear about the most often when this comes up is I want to feel more connected to my spouse or my romantic partner, right? This is a busy chapter of life. We're pulled in a lot of different directions. We're becoming more like housemates or project managers together. And I really want to get back to feeling that sense of deep connection, maybe that we used to have before life became really complicated. So that's one area to think about. I hear a lot, I want to feel more connected to my children. And that's a tricky one because we also want these relationships to be two-way streets, and children are, depending on their ages, not always so good at that, right? They sometimes need more than they give. But I do hear that one come up a lot. I hear parents and other relatives. So I'm aware that my parents are getting older and I want my relationship with them to be stronger. I want to spend more time with them. Or my siblings, my cousins, my, extended family who may be in the area or not in the area. And then, of course, friends. When I work with women, and so I hear a lot about girlfriends and the chapters of life where we spend a lot of time leaning into those friendships and relationships, and then the chapters of life where that becomes more difficult and how much we miss it because it's such a rich component of life. So whichever one of those sparks for you, your spouse or romantic partner, your children, your friends, your relatives, your parents, extended family, you get to choose, but then it's time to act. And I've been saying for years inside of coaching that there are a few elements that really drive connection upward, right? They increase the sort of connective tissue of our relationships. And I think about this as like a 3-part formula. And today I'm going to call it eyes, ears, repeat, just to help you a little bit with memory. Eyes, ears, repeat. Hi, it's Cheryl Ann. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. So what do I mean by eyes? Eyes are this notion of having eye-to-eye contact, where you are having time that you are able to really look at and sustain that eye contact with another human being. That sounds trite, but it's not, because what it does is it helps us stay present and avoid multitasking or getting distracted in ways that can impede the connection. Think about the quality of the conversation if you're talking to your spouse in the kitchen while you're cleaning and making dinner and going through the mail and unpacking backpacks and putting lunchbox stuff in the dishwasher, right? Which we've all done. versus the quality of the connection if you're sitting down at a table for two, sharing a meal or having a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, right? Totally different vibe. So that connection, no matter who it's with, of giving someone our undivided attention, which is really enabled through eye contact, just spending that time facing each other is like, boom, there's the first brick of this improvement plan, right? Eye contact. Ears. Ears, I think of as this is a two-way conversation. It's about speaking and listening. And we want to be able to get beyond small talk. Okay. So you think about the person that you maybe only see at the bus stop, or, you crisscross each other dropping a kid off for an activity, or you run into them in the hallway at work. And it never really gets beyond sort of cliched small talk. Oh, how you doing today? Oh, great. Oh my gosh, look at this weather we're having. Oh, did you see who won that game? Right? Those sort of platitudes or very cliched little throwaway phrases that we use are not what drives connection. What drives the connection is the opportunity to get beyond the small talk, right? Where we're getting into something that's more about our thoughts, our feelings, our observations, our opinions, and where that becomes a two-way dialogue of both sharing and listening. It just creates this network of connection that supports the entire relationship. And this can be true with children. It can be true with adult friends, and it certainly can be true with our romantic relationships. So spending that time with people in two-way dialogue takes the relationship level up. It could be something like a book club, long walks with somebody or short walks with someone, time in the car together, playing something like a game of golf, anything that's going to get you into that ability to have conversation. And I'm going to contrast that with oh, this is a friend who I go to yoga with, but we show up at the same time and we take a class in which you're essentially silent, right? And then we pack up our things and go home. Very different opportunity to create connection than if we're at a book club or a Bible study or a coffee date, right? Where we can really get into a conversation. With kids, maybe it's something like playing a board game where there's a conversation happening with them, or talking with them while you're in the car. And the kids are one place where breaking the eye contact rule actually can be beneficial, because adults can be a little intimidating when we're looking a kid right in the eye. So being next to them, like both of you sitting in the car, or they're in the back seat and you're in the front seat, and you can sort of check in through the rearview mirror. I think the data is pretty clear that that's a very effective way to have a low pressure conversation with a kid if there's a power dynamic differential. But for adults, we want to be in that place where we've got eye contact and our ears engaged. And how we spend our time in these experiences with each other really defines how close the relationship can become, right? So that two-way dialogue, what's defined as reciprocal self-disclosure, right? If we want to be psychological about it, the responsiveness where we ask follow-up questions and we're engaged in what they're saying, as well as things like levity and humor really play a big role in amplifying the relationship. So sometimes, especially for men, just the conversation can be a little intimidating. And that's where activities can really help create experiences that we're sharing, right? It's like a proxy for the conversation, or it takes some of the pressure off of the conversation. So that could be going to play Top Golf together, or going and doing some sort of novel activity that kind of gets you laughing and has you engaged in some kind of an adventure, can be very powerful in driving that connection up if just conversation is feeling a little stressful. Okay. So eyes and ears, and then repeat. The repeat really matters. Okay. Regular, frequent interaction with those opportunities for eye contact and conversation. Think about what I said at the beginning, which is that it can take 200 hours to advance the relationship to this level of real comfort and ease in the conversation. So think about activities that sort of naturally can occur with regularity. And just a couple that come to mind that have been really important in my life over the years, the way I dug myself out of that Atlanta isolation chamber was one, I enrolled in graduate school. And while working on my MBA, I regularly had opportunities to interact with classmates. And two, I started running with a really good friend and then with a running group. And the regularity of training and going out on those runs and talking during those runs created this cadence of connection where the repetitiveness really increased the relationships, right? In other times, it was a Bible study where I had regular weekly interaction with the same small group of women. It can be a book club. It can be coffee dates, but it can be commuting with someone. But things that happen on the regular are really how we drive this connection. So as much as I'd love to tell you like, hey, it's a one and done, go do one thing. It does start with one thing. But I think what you're sorting to is who are the small collection of people that I want to engage with regularly. I'm willing to make time in my life. They're willing to make time in their life for this deepening of connection because it's so mutually beneficial. And I have one watch out for you as you think about this. And it's a big one in our culture today. And that is to be careful that we're not hiding behind our phones, right? It's way too easy to retreat into our phones when we're feeling a little uncomfortable in a social situation. And that act can really hinder our ability to make those real life connections. So if you are checking your phone during a conversation, or let's say the other person is checking their phone during the conversation, do you really feel like you're worthy of their undivided attention? No, right? And that's how our kids feel if we're doing that to them. It's how we look unapproachable if we're out at like a party or a business event. And I know my phone can be my security blanket. I mean, if I walk into a place where I don't know the people or I don't know them well, it's so easy to sort of hide behind my phone, which makes me appear very busy and therefore not approachable. But what we want is we want to be having that conversation. So it's just a caution, a little asterisk to say, let's be careful that we're not hiding behind our phones. We're going to kind of come out from behind them to have that eye-to-eye connection and really be able to be in conversation. If you need a starting point, if you need a place and you are especially looking for friendship with other women, the opportunity to be in conversation and get beyond the small talk, you may benefit from being in the Brilliant Balance community. I will tell you, I get so fed by our community of clients. We have daily group coaching calls. We have in-person events that we host regularly. We have one-on-one coaching calls where you're really getting the undivided attention of your coach. It is a very powerful framework. So if you need a starting place to kind of catapult yourself into community, you might want to check that out. Easiest thing to do is brilliant-balance.com/schedule. We can have a chat. We'll see if that is a fit for you. All right, that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.